We talking about play calling again, man. Shad Khan spoke out on it a bit, and I'll give you my opinion on it in just a second on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Your team every day, and I am the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast. My name is Tony Wiggins, and we always thank you for making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars. In fact, you can go over to YouTube right now, if you will, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button on the episode if you can for me. Thank you very much, and hit that bell so you receive notifications each and every time we drop an episode. Also, wherever you get your podcast, your audio podcast is very important. Make sure you tap in and subscribe to that location as well. And make sure you listen up so you do not miss an episode of Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by FanDuel. That's right. Make every moment more as the playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. And shout out to the everydayers that join us here every single day. And you can be one. All you got to do is join us every single day. Also, y'all know about this subject today, how I feel about it. I've been feeling about it. If you've been listening to the Locked On Jaguars podcast, you know sometimes I think there's much ado about nothing. But no matter what you say, you can't convince people, fans, other media members, or otherwise that it's true. So I'll let you behind the veil a little bit today and tell you why I feel like this play calling issue constantly keeps coming up is just a distraction from all of the real things that are going on with the Jaguars that you have to be concerned with. So by the time we end today's show, I'll give you a big picture point of view of how I feel about that, which ain't that bad. It ain't that deep, but it's deep enough that, you know, right now we're in the season of optimism. We don't need any other distractions. Right in the middle, I'll tell you how you get what you ask for. Sometimes when you constantly want to make a big deal out of things, they actually become a big deal when they really, really shouldn't. But here we go, not play calling again. We're going to bury that. We're not going to bury it. We're going to start. This came when Shad Khan spoke. I want to get this straight because I'm looking at the story. Shad was doing, I believe, an interview with, it might have been Profile. Let me get it right first before I tell you who exactly the interview was with. But I know it was with one of the heavies, and I saw it on social media. Now, I got it from an article that John Shipley wrote, who covers the Jaguars here, but I think John got it from somewhere else, and I'm going to make sure I got that done. But anyway, the main thing was they were talking about the play calling issue that plagued this team last year, in my opinion. So in the offseason a year ago, Doug Peterson said that Press Taylor would be calling plays. And he made sure it was a point of emphasis, that Shad was talking to Mark Long of the Associated Press. So there you go. I'll leave. Mark Long he covers the Jags here locally for us, for AP, and he's one of the OGs in it. So there you go. That's good enough for me. When I wanted to make sure I put the proper name on it. It's Mark Long. Mark's a good friend of mine. So the story behind it was, in my opinion, the second Doug Peterson said that, I went, oh my God. Now, when things don't go right, they're going to blame Press Taylor. And I have a little bit of an interesting take on this entire thing because I actually have a source. My source was someone who was in that building. And they informed me that while there was a little bit of feeling from people because that subject took on a life of its own, in their opinion, the process that Doug Peterson and Press Taylor had in 2023 was no different from the one in 22. He just announced it. The process that they had was also one that they did the same stuff in Philadelphia. Apparently, this is what I was told. Now, this is from my source. Doug always called the first 20 some odd plays in the first quarter because they were scripted, but it was worked on with Doug and Press all week of how they wanted to come out. And then as the game started to ebb and flow, and Doug felt the need to do other stuff, Press would take over. So it's not as if Press takes over because Doug gets inundated with all of this other stuff. It's more like, look, this is what we work on all week to get started. This is what I'll do. And then bang, you finish it out. So if that's been their process the whole time, we got to look at this. In 2022, the offense got off to a slower start. And down the stretch, the team seemed to play better in the second half of the season, and they also played better in second half of games. That, along with the video evidence of the comebacks that they had that year, and Trevor sitting on the sideline, and now I've seen at least 2 videos where he said something about, I'm glad Press did that. It gives you, between those videos, between the information that I had gotten and the way Doug Peterson kind of looks at people when they talk about that, and he kind of looks at them like they don't know what the hell they're talking about, suggests to me that what I've heard is true, but that it's taken on a life of its own. So you ask, why did he announce it? Everyone says, well, he's just trying to get his buddy a job. Well, he fired one of his buddies. One of his very close friends was Mike Caldwell, the defensive coordinator. So I don't know that it's his motive to like do whatever he can to get his friend a job at the expense of the franchise. That don't make sense to me, because if the franchise don't win, you and all your friends ain't gonna have no job. So from that perspective, it seems like to me a bunch of people that want to make that a big deal always try to find excuses and reasons for that big deal being made. And I think it slaps people in the face, especially when they absolutely don't know the truth. The truth is nothing changed from what I was told from 2022 to 2023, with the exception that he said that Press would be calling plays. The only thing I can imagine is he took that moment to try to promote his buddy and say, look, he's not, this is not an Andy Reid, Eric Bieniemy situation where y'all ain't gonna get a dude credit for doing anything, because he actually does do a lot of stuff. And I told people a long time ago, being an offensive coordinator is more than play calling. It's teaching, it's designing, it's studying the opponent and coming up with a game plan each and every single week. And that's why head coaches, even the ones that call plays, they need help doing it. The only ones that seem like they don't think that they need help doing it are the ones that have an opinion that teams are just going to adjust to them. And some teams are good enough to do that. No, we'll just make them adjust to us. We don't care what they do. Everybody doesn't move that way, though. Everybody doesn't move that way. So from what I've been told, all of this was much ado about nothing. If it wasn't, it would be as simple as this. Yeah, I'll reassume play calling, and Press is going to spend more time helping me coordinate things and looking at more tape so we can have. That's the easiest thing. But the reason why it's not that easy is because maybe Doug knows what's best. Maybe Doug feels like whatever y'all think the problem isn't what I think the problem is, and I shouldn't be sitting here adjusting to what y'all think, and it's not real. I'm gonna even put that together when I read Shad Khan's. I'm gonna read what Shad Khan actually said. And I like what he said. And the reason why is because, and I'll explain this, if you don't think the coach is right, then he's the wrong coach for the job. If he turns out to not be right. But if you do, just don't get into the business of guys that don't have whistles, telling guys who actually wear whistles what the guy who's wearing the whistle needs to be doing. Because then it gets to the point where if it doesn't work, nobody knows who to blame. The guy just did what you told him to do. And ironically, that's exactly what Shad Khan said. And I'm going to tell you exactly how he said it in segment 2 here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by BetterHelp. Be real transparent with you. I have been in therapy on several occasions for different reasons. And some people may be thinking that therapy might help them. And if that's the case, if you're dealing with pain management, time management, death in the family, or some kind, some sort of mixture of all of those things, then therapy might be the place for it. And if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to become to be very convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. We are in segment number 2 here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. When asked if he had a preference of who calls the plays and his opinion on it, Shad, when he spoke, as a result, let me read this. This is what John Shipley wrote. As a result, the question is up in the air whether Peterson or Taylor will call plays, something Khan spoke to on Wednesday at the Miller Electric Center. Is where the Jaguars train. When asked if he has an opinion on who should call plays, here we go. Quote, yeah, I have an opinion. Okay, but then those are things. It's like the question about Trevor. I have an opinion and I think, but I don't want to tell people, look, we need to do it, because then things don't work out and they look at me and say, we did it because you wanted it. Okay. So I think there's so much been written been written about it. Heck, New York Times had an article on it. And if you remember the last line of that article, okay, the last sentence of that article on this thing. So I think, but Doug, he's empowered. I'm going to let him decide. He should be empowered, in my opinion. That was the end of the quote, by the way. He should be empowered, in my opinion. Khan, and this is John Shipley's assessment, is that Khan clearly has an idea who he wishes would call plays, but the choice is going to come down to Doug Peterson. Yeah. Doug said this, and this is a quote. I think those are things that I need to, consider this offseason and this spring. There were things out of my control that I had to deal with, the last year that takes you away from some of that stuff. And Doug said that at the scouting combine. I'll give you some more quotes, and not going to get into those, but, so yeah, it's something that I have to, as a part of the evaluation process, I have to evaluate, myself and press as decision makers and play callers and see what's best for our team. So it sounds like, I'm not going to psychoanalyze what either one guy said, but Shad was right. And it does sound like Shad has a preference. I really don't know, man. If you're the owner, I mean, how would you know if one guy's better at calling plays than the other? I try to ask people that stuff all the time. I just don't know. Because even in Philly, Doug, Press, Frank Reich, it's been the same process regardless of who Doug's assistant has been, according to the people that I know. That he never changed. So asking him to take over as a full-time play caller, is that wrong? No. If you're the owner, you can ask whatever you want to ask. But maybe he's asking him something that he's asking him to do something he's never done. Andy Reid says he doesn't call all those plays in Kansas City. And nobody wants to believe him because people want to believe that he's just making an excuse for Eric Bieniemy. But I think Doug Peterson, I think Coach Matt Nagy, all of those guys will probably tell you, no, this is dead true. He ain't lying. This is the truth. So it goes back to, sometimes I think people want to be right as opposed to wanting things to be correct. And those are two different things. You got to be correct about what is. Don't just be right and want everything to change your way. What if Andy Reid, what if Doug Peterson has never been a full-time play caller as a head coach? What if you found that out and you'd be like, really? Yeah. So now you're asking him to do something that he hasn't done. He was hired because he won a Super Bowl. He was hired because of the way he won the Super Bowl. Ironically, I think he was fired because he wouldn't then go and change and do what an owner wanted him to do. And a GM, what they wanted him to do. And he probably feels like, well, I want to do what I know is best for us to win. That's why I get into these situations and I wonder, what is the motivation for him not doing what is best for him and the team? sometimes I sit here and I think, do you think his ego is that big that I want to prove everybody that Press is what I say he is? Do you think his desire for that to happen is bigger and better than his desire to bring a Super Bowl champion to the Jacksonville Jaguars and be the first coach in NFL history to do it twice for two different franchises? He'd be the first coach to win a Super Bowl with two different franchises as a head coach. He'd bring a Super Bowl championship to a city that has been maligned and talked about by so many people from all walks of life. Every time you turn around, the Jaguars are somebody's punchline. So you mean to tell me just so his friend could get a head coaching job or be recognized as an offensive coordinator, that a man that has a chance to do that, and a man who probably, if this opportunity doesn't work, might not get another one at it, but you don't get fired 2 times and get a third job, right? What on earth would make him not do what is absolutely best for the team? So I'm thinking that if Doug Peterson decides that he's going to continue to do things the way he's done it, because see, maybe he's doing that because maybe he knows a lot of those games that they won down the stretch and they were playing better in the second half, he wasn't calling the plays. And it's not that Press might be a better play caller, but it could be the fact that Doug was doing other things too that allowed the team to win. Maybe he was coaching other coaches. Maybe he was taking a big picture approach. Maybe he's sitting there telling Press in between drives or in between plays or during timeouts, hey, let's talk this through. What about that other thing we talked about? Or remember we were working on last Wednesday, about 8:00 at night when we saw this play or whatever. There are more ways to affect the game than actually sitting there being a play caller. And this isn't my take up for Press show. That's not what it is. But what it is sometimes we don't really know and understand exactly what people do. And I make opinions. I form opinions every single day, and I'm right about some and I'm wrong about some. But one thing I try to never, ever, ever, ever do is to pretend that I know all the information that goes into a decision-making process. What if him calling plays is actually him doing something that's actually worse for the team, and he knows it, but everyone else thinks that it's something else? It goes back to Shad saying, right, we did something and you told me to do it and it didn't work. I think there are bigger fish to fry and there are bigger things to worry about than this. In segment 3, I'm going to tell you what they are, things that people should be concerned about way more than this. That is something that is. This is a lesson to Doug Peterson. Sometimes you just can't say stuff. If it's a need to know basis. Maybe it was no need for us to even know that kind of stuff. That's the only thing that I'll say where he really, really probably made a big mistake in saying that. So I'm going to tell you about the things, the real concerns for this team, and things that folks need to be concerned with. I like the fact that Shad was asked those questions, though, because he gave an answer that I thought showed that while having a finger on his pulse of the team, he also knows it's probably best for the team that he doesn't make coaching decisions and decisions about stuff that the coach should be making. I'll tell you about more of that here in the third and final segment on Locked On Jaguars. But first, I want to let you know something. Locked On Sports Today, man. If you're watching Fox Sports or ESPN all day and you have to turn down the volume with all the shouting, make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Tell you what some of the bigger concerns is in a bigger picture and why I actually like Shad's comments on this, and I'll do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, man, I know the NBA's over. I know you're waiting and chomping a bit for training camp to start, and you're wondering, what can I wager on now? Well, WNBA and baseball are still going, and I know some of those sports aren't the sports that you like, right? They're not sporting like you want them to. But let me tell you, FanDuel keeps the sports going whenever I want, and all I have to do is open the app and dream up any bets anytime I'm in the mood. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer. So go ahead to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We always thank you for making us your first listen. Big picture, when you ask me about what the Jaguars should be thinking about or what should be concerns this year, who calling plays probably goes down the list, way down the list for me. I'd be concerned about the offensive line. I'd be concerned about making sure the guys pick the defensive scheme up. I'd be concerned about trying to figure out whether Tyson Campbell is a man-to-man corner, so you can know whether or not you need to maybe even look into making a move during the season. I try to figure out if Devin Lloyd is going to actually live up to his draft status this year. Those are some things that are concerns, and there's not really a negative concern about any of those things. But the real biggest concern is I'm still wondering if Trent Baalke's the right guy. Even though he had, I think, a pretty good offseason, I still get this bad taste in my mouth when I'm thinking like, man, they could be at least a little bit further along than they are now had they didn't sit on their laurels last year and wait, right? Ironically, one of the things that I'm not super concerned with is whether or not Trevor Lawrence is the man for the job. That is not a concern with me one bit. I'm not concerned about pass rush. I'm not concerned about Josh Allen and his money that he got. I'm not concerned about whether they have a good enough player in the slot in Darnell Savage. Not even concerned about the safeties and Andre. No, I'm not worried about any of that stuff. Big picture wise, I always still just wonder in the back of my mind, even though we're screaming Baalke masterclass, I'm wondering in the back of my mind that at the end of the day, do they have the correct general manager? And I think that's the only thing that I would consider a true long-term concern at this point for the football team. I'm all in on them going in right now and doing all of the things that they've done for the season and being optimistic about where they are as a football team. With the quarterback, with Ryan Nielsen. Ryan Nielsen is probably the biggest thing that has me overjoyed about the potential for this season. And then the fact that they went jumbo and got big competitive guys on the defensive line. I like the body types of all of the players that they got in the secondary. I love Chris Richard and his attitude and the way that he speaks and the things that he brings. I like them going big with Mason Smith and Justin Jefferson and getting really, really physical on their line with young bodies and not just depending on undrafted free agents and journeyman types on the line. I like the fact that they went for big body types at wide receiver to give their quarterback a whole bunch of catch radius and athleticism and explosiveness. Concern is maybe they could have done a little bit more on the offensive line and not have so much faith in the dudes that they already have. A concern is that they believe that just being healthy alone is enough for those guys to have better play. But play calling, when I think about it, I go back to all of the conversation that we have when we talk about Trevor Lawrence. I talked to Peacock and Williamson on the Peacock and Williamson NFL show just yesterday. And I said, man, people talk about Trevor like he ain't playing well, but then they don't talk about all those drops. So what part of play calling was responsible for those drops? What part of play calling is responsible for your center who couldn't block? Did you ever think, like Kendrick say, can we play a game of have you ever thought about the fact that maybe play calling was the way it was because they knew they couldn't block people? And I told you after the 49ers game, I said, I saw something that concerns me. Anybody who wants to do it, they go back. You can go back in the history all the way back to when they played 49ers in week 12 or week 13. And I said it. I just saw something that cannot be fixed until the offseason. And if I saw it, they knew it. I said it can't be fixed in the offseason. You ain't going to be able to fix your offensive line. They can't block. They can't stop anybody at the point. I'm telling you, you can't fix that physicality. And then what did they come out and say? We need to be more physical. Yeah, we knew it. They were 8-3 and it was smoke and mirrors and it was dangerous because people thought that All they got to do is turn that switch and they'll play. I was one of them. I said, well, maybe they can play a little bit, but the problem is they couldn't play a little bit better. That's why I just cut myself off. They couldn't because of the offensive line. That was the biggest thing. So if that was the biggest thing, in my opinion, how come it's the thing that was addressed, in my opinion, the least, with the exception of adding 32-year-old Mitch Morse, which I like. But rolling everybody back thinking that you can just get healthy. Just getting healthy. That's like somebody telling me yesterday, well, Joel Embiid stays healthy, the Sixers can win the championship. Yeah, but Joel Embiid staying healthy is something you ain't never seen him do. So how can you say that? And that goes back to this. That goes back to the same thing with me. The concern is the O-line. The concern is the approach, and that line is fine. And the ultimate concern with that is who decides that, and that's Trent Baalke. And so even though I say kudos, and I understand why you didn't sign a big-time guard in free agency, and I understand all of that stuff, it still goes back to they're in that situation. If the offensive line is a problem, again, we cannot blame play calling. We cannot blame all of that. The only thing we do is look at the GM and say, why didn't you get more help? Because at the end of the day, weapons are fine, but you need a defense system too. You need some bodyguards for your quarterback. You need bodyguards. And if there's one major concern about the overall look of this team, well, that's it. That's it. I know I said DBs too, that's a big question. And it is a question because they got people that are trying to do things in a new scheme, and some of them haven't done it. The best players haven't played in this system. In fact, their best player is probably Tyson Campbell, and that's the guy that people say doesn't fit what Ryan Nielsen's trying to do. Ryan Nielsen says, hey, man, they can figure that out. So if they can figure that out, then kudos. They think the kid can play there. They think the kid can play there. We'll just have to see. But from not even worrying about the style part of it, not even worrying about whether a player can fit, I'm talking about from just a pure talent standpoint. He has talent, so that's why it's not a concern. As big a concern in this vernacular and in this point of view of things for this team to be worried about. They better hope they're right on the offensive line. I agree now that they shouldn't go out and add an offensive lineman right now, and they shouldn't go out and add a DB right now, because I don't think at this stage you're going to find anybody that's going to help you. You've already basically committed yourself, and there's no need in hedging your bets now. Now it's time to prove whether you're right or wrong. Ain't no right or wrong with y'all, man, but you need to check this out. If you're feeling wrong about what you watch in sports, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on the Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. You guys take care, man. I like the fact from a big picture standpoint that Shad Khan said what he said. I'm going to leave it up to them. I got my opinion, but I ain't going to tell you what it is, and I'm going to leave it up to them. And I like what Doug said. I know what I need to do and what we need to do, but we'll figure it out together. It's none of your business. Just talk about whether the offense is good or bad. Let them figure out who's responsible, and then we'll move on from there. But other than that, I'm always going to say it's always going to be on Doug Peterson, because whether it's his offense or whether it's Press Taylor or who Press is calling it, he is right there with a headset. If there's something he wants to stop, if there's something he wants to veto, he has the power to do it at any point. So there's no need to sit here and overthink this. Play calling is not going to be the problem in Jacksonville. If the plays aren't working, it's probably a personnel issue. All right, man, y'all take care. Make sure you join us here again on Locked On Jaguars, because it's your team every day. We always thank you for making us your first listen. We'll see you next time.